Honestly, this video on cell etiquette is probably the most important out of step 2. So you might want to listen to it a couple of times. The majority of friction that occurs between inmates in custody is with cellies. And I mean, it's pretty easy to understand, especially if you're sharing an 8 by 11 foot cell with another man. You know, you're basically living in a bathroom with another grown human being, and it's somebody that you've just met. A lot of times you might be, especially when you first come into custody, you're with somebody that you didn't choose. There's a good chance that you don't like each other, that he doesn't want you in there with him. So it's you're starting from a situation that's very uncomfortable, and then you add into it, lockdowns where you're stuck together, or a whole bunch of different things that can just make a situation unbearable. So I'm going to cover some of that stuff, but I'm probably going to need more than one video for this. But right now I want to just cover basic rules to improve your chances of getting along with your cellie. Unfortunately, sometimes you're just going to have an asshole that you're living with, and there's nothing you can do to improve things because you're just living with, he's just a horrible human being, and you're just stuck, and the best thing you can do is find somewhere else to move to as quickly as possible. But no one's perfect, so even the best cellie will get on your nerves, and you're going to get on their nerves if you're not following certain protocol. And really, this form of prison etiquette, these unwritten rules were developed to just help people coexist in such a tiny space. And, long-term cellies, they move around in there like synchronized swimmers, just like kind of ducking and dodging around each other. You get used to it, and you get into routines with guys. And when you find a good cellie, they're hard to come by. In fact, it's a really stressful thing. Like, when I was at Beckley, I pretty much went through that whole experience with like 2 cellies, and I was there 13 years and lived 85-90% of that entire time with just 2 guys, and they were good guys. And when those living arrangements came to an end, one of them went home, and then something else caused me to move out with the other guy. They were stressful situations because it takes a while to like really get comfortable with a new guy, and it's just like relationships. You're always comparing the new guy to the old guy, and so anyway, I want to cover basic etiquette and just give you an understanding of what is going to be expected of you and what you need to do to minimize the chance that you have friction with this guy that you're going to be living with. The first thing is communication. You guys have to communicate. Just like, a relationship with your girl, if you're not communicating, you're going to have issues. If you're bottling stuff up, there's going to be resentments. Eventually somebody's going to have a bad day, snap, and a fight's going to break out. So you need to communicate. The best time for that is when you first move in. So step 1, I really covered day 1 cellie type situations because, step 1's covering the first 90 days in custody. So in that, we went over, what to do if you end up with somebody that doesn't want you in there. So you can just review those videos if before you self-surrender, just so you have an idea of what to do if you show up at your prison and this guy just is refusing to let you move in with him. We're going to take a different look at the cellie dynamic in these videos. It's more about just showing respect and maintaining peace between you guys. But it all starts with communication. So the day you move in with somebody, or if you're self-surrendering and you show up at a prison, the day you get put in that cell with that person, you need to communicate. Ask them how they do things, when they clean the cell, when they want you to clean it, how do they go about it. Just, each person has been, any prisoner that's been down a while understands how this works. And if you ask, they're going to tell you how they expect things in there. And there's always like a little bit of, marking your territory type thing with guys. They get real territorial, especially if guys been in a cell a while and you come in there. The best way on day one is just to come in with the attitude that this is his cell. I'm coming in here, but we're going to do things his way, right? Because it is his cell. And if I can't live with the way he does things, then I'll find somewhere else to move to as fast as possible. So that's the mentality to have with that. General rules, though, that I want to cover right here is the way you behave in a cell. So the first thing I'm going to cover is sink etiquette. All right, so there's a right way and a wrong way to brush your teeth in a cell. And every inmate isn't going to live by this. But the general rule, especially if you're in transit, where like when you're in transit, you'll go to the Oklahoma Transit Center, you go to Atlanta, there's other places throughout the country, and you only be there for like a week or two. And you might have 3 or 4 cellies. It just depends on how long they're there and when the bus comes in or they're playing. And so like throughout that short amount of time, you're going to be living with a bunch of people. And these are the rules that you live by 100% when you're doing this, because you're interacting with so many different inmates. The communication, when you're in a permanent cell situation with somebody, communication is going to cover it. You just ask your cellie how he does it, what he expects from you with the sink. But the general rule is when you're brushing your teeth, you do not spit in the sink. Do not spit in the sink. You spit in the toilet, and you flush before you spit so it doesn't splatter up around the rim or anything. Don't make a mess. Yes, you can rinse your toothbrush in the sink. You haven't got any other choice to do it, but it's just an act of respect. And there's a lot of guys that are germaphobes in custody. A lot of guys develop OCD because every other aspect of their life is out of their control, so they really try to control everything that happens in their cell. Just to get like a false sense of security or whatever reason motivating it. But as far as sinks go, do not spit your toothpaste in the sink. Spit in the toilet, flush before you spit. Other sink etiquette rules is generally guys don't want you to shave in the sink. Now this is something you need to discuss with your cellie because he might not feel that way. But part of it will depend on the type of cell you're in. If you're in one of these newer prisons that has just a metal rectangle sitting in the wall, kind of what you have in mind if you've seen a movie with guys in prison. If it's one of those metal sinks like that, the drainage in these things are freaking terrible. And all it takes is clogging the drain up 3 or 4 times with shaving cream and hair, and these things are unbelievably clogged. They won't drain anymore. So if you go into a cell that has those metal rectangles in the wall, I would really recommend that you don't shave in the sink there. But ask your cellie, how does he feel about it? Maybe he shaves in the sink. If he doesn't want you to shave in the cell like that, they sell shower mirrors. You can take them into the shower. I did that for years. I pretty much shaved every time I shaved in the shower, holding a mirror. The water's way hotter in there. Your skin softens up so you can make it happen. The other thing for sink etiquette has to do with dishes. Ask your cellie, but it's usually easier to go to one of the mop closets in the cell block. If you're on a multi-tiered cell block, there should be at least one mop closet on every floor. You have better water flow in those areas. It makes it a lot easier to go in there and clean your bowls out anyway. And, it's just another element of clogging the drain with food particles and that type of thing. But like I said, ask your cellie. You're going to have some cellies that are not going to care about any of that stuff. You're going to have some that are going to want to fight you if you ever deviate just one time from these rules. Some cellies might even ask you to not even brush your teeth in the sink, but to go to the mop closet to do it. So like I said, communication will carry you a long way with this stuff. But absolutely, for sure, understand at all time that you're sharing a very limited space with another man. So don't put a dirty bowl in the sink and just leave it there for a couple hours, because you don't know, your cellie might be coming in right behind you and need to get into the sink, and you're all in his way. So really just try to understand that you're sharing a space with somebody else and you're trying to be out of their way as much as possible. And by demonstrating respect like that constantly, you stand a much greater chance of not having friction with your cellie. And that goes towards the entire cell. If you go in there and you're going to take a shower and you take off your clothes and your shoes, it's not your bedroom. Don't leave the stuff on the floor. Put your shoes under the bed so your cellie's not going to trip over them. Put your clothes up on top of the bed or in your dirty clothes bin. As far as space in the locker, in the cell, locker space is yours. You have your locker, he has his. You can put stuff on top of your locker for storage if you have side-by-side cells. Do not put any of your stuff on top of his locker. That's his space. So just try to respect his space in all ways, shapes, and forms when you go in there. And as far as his bed goes, if he's got the bottom bunk, which he probably will if you're moving in with him, do not sit on his bed without your permission. Don't step on his bed to climb up on the top bunk without his permission. See whether he's okay with it or not. Some guys do not want anybody touching their bed but themselves. Some guys won't care. If he says that you can sit on his bunk, don't put your butt where his face goes. He does not need to get pink eye because of you. So sit somewhere else. But as a general rule, I would recommend not sitting on his bunk. Just sit on your own bunk or bring a chair into the room. All right, the next element of etiquette is toilet etiquette. Now, this is all about communication too. Like when I got shipped to the penitentiary in Yazoo City at the beginning of COVID, they shoved me in a cell with a black Muslim man who'd been down 20 some years. And it was the first time he'd ever lived with a white guy. It was the first time I ever lived that long with a black guy. And we actually became really good friends. We got along. We were locked in the cell together for about 120 days, getting out twice a week to take a shower and use the phone. But, as different as we were able to get along with little to no friction because we both had been down a long time and understood, the rules of prison etiquette. But, Muslim inmates don't stand when they pee. They sit. A lot of them will sit like reverse on the toilet, or they'll sit in a chair in front of the toilet. Some of them that are taller will put a knee on the ground. It's part of their religion. They don't want it splattering or whatever. So when I moved in there with him, he asked me to do this, and it wasn't something I was willing to do, but I still showed respect in the way that I used the bathroom. So like I said, this might be something that you'll end up having to communicate with. Some guys just feel like it's cleaner. Most steel toilets and cells don't have a lid that raises up and down or a seat that raises up and down. There's just a skinny rim that you sit on, and it splatters when you stand and pee. So this is a reason why some guys, even guys that aren't Muslims, will sit and pee when they do number one in the cell, just to keep urine from splattering around the cell. And you'll go in some nasty cells that smell like pee from guys not, using any form of etiquette with this. Usually the best compromise that guys do is while you're peeing, you flush. So the bulk of everything goes down the toilet and there's less splatter, but guys will also keep a spray bottle beside the toilet, and every time they pee, they'll spray the toilet down and wipe it down, or they'll have a rag for that so they don't waste toilet paper. So this protocol is basically something that you need to discuss with your cellie when you get there. How does he use the bathroom? How does he expect you to do it? You're moving into his cell, so it's pretty much up to him. You're just going to have to respect the way he does it, or you're going to have to move somewhere else. The reason that it was up for discussion between me and the Muslim guys, because we both came in on a bus together, and we both went into the cell at the same time. So, like, neither one of us really had dibs on it. We just had to talk things out, work things out. So this is something you need to discuss with your cellie. As stupid as it sounds, it can cause a lot of friction if you do it incorrectly, or do it without demonstrating any form of respect in the process. So it can cause problems. The next element that you need to work out, and this is like an important thing on just picking a cellie when you move into a new place, is one thing that I always asked, because I was an early riser. I get up in the morning and I need to use the bathroom when I get up. So you need to work that out with a cellie. Are you guys on the same sleep schedule? Are you going to need to be using the bathroom every day to drop a deuce while your cellie's sleeping? Some guys don't care on either side. Some guys don't care about doing it. Some guys don't care about being on the receiving end. They'll just pull their blanket over their head. So all that's something you need to talk about and work out in advance. And if it's an issue, then I would recommend finding somebody that's on the same sleep cycle as you, so you can do it while they're not in the room. And usually the way it works, if you have a cell, there'll be a little window slit, but there'll be a piece of cardboard in the cell that you cover up the window with while you're using the bathroom. During lockdowns, you're not going to have a choice. You're going to have to do it in front of each other. And there's a lot of different ways. Some guys will just, they'll use the bathroom with their cellie, or pull the blanket over their head, or they'll turn the light off in the cell if it's nighttime. Or they'll even hang a string and a sheet up across the room to hide it all. But the general rule is flush the entire time you're using the bathroom to try to keep the smell down. It's going to be difficult if you're in Obama passed this water conservation law before he left office, and it affected pretty much all the federal offices and buildings, and it really had a big effect on federal prison. So there's a lot of prisons that have timers, and they work on different principles. I think usually it's like you can flush a toilet twice in a 5-minute period. And if you do more than that, the toilet will lock up on you, and it depends on how they've got it set. It can lock up for 15, 30, an hour before you're able to flush it again. And I won't tell you the horror stories of some bad situations that I've had to endure like that. But that's going to be something else you're going to need to ask your cellie. In fact, that's usually one of the first thing guys ask when they show up in a new compound. When they go in the cell, they'll ask that, hey, has this thing got a timer in it or not? So you have to figure all of that out and learn how to work around it. The only other element as far as toilet etiquette, I know this is way more information than you thought you probably ever needed, but it's very important to know this stuff. When you're sharing an 8x12 cell, especially during a lockdown, when you're locked in the cell with somebody else, like, show some respect with if you have gas. If you're in there busting gas, you are going to make this other man angry. I guarantee it. Like I said, people are already frustrated, and if he's sitting in there having to smell your butt, there's probably going to be problems. So you can't help it if you got gas, okay? But you can show respect by getting up, go sit on the toilet, and flush while you fart. And if there's not a timer, just keep flushing. And it does help a lot. It's not foolproof, but it helps a lot. If you got some spray or some prayer oil or something like that, you maybe give a little squirt of that while you're doing it. But it demonstrates to your cellie that you're not trying to gas him out. You're trying to show respect, and you can't help it. So I highly recommend doing that. I've actually seen several fights jump off over. In fact, the first guy I watched get beat up in county jail was coming off crack, and he sat down beside a guy that was on the phone on a collect phone call. I mean, it's like probably an $8 phone call. He's making 15 minutes to call his family, and this dude farts beside him, and the guy's stuck sitting there on the phone having to smell it while he's talking, fuming, mad that he's in jail. He hangs up the phone and grabs that crackhead and bounces him off every wall in that room. And the crackhead was so out of it, he might not have even realized what had happened. But you just have to understand that, like, you ain't at your house. And, you know, I know that some guys think farts are like the highest form of comedy. You go into prison with that attitude, you're going to get beat up. Don't do it in the TV rooms. Don't do it in the cell blocks. Go somewhere as private as possible to do it. And granted, I mean, there's plenty of guys in prison that are slobs. You might end up with a cellie that's cool with it. You guys can sit in there and shit on each other all day long, but I don't recommend having that attitude because, you know, like I said, horseplay, all that stuff eventually will get you in trouble because one day somebody's going to be in a bad mood and it'll just be ill-timed and there'll be consequences for it. So it's something to definitely keep in mind with all that. We're going to hit some more angles on this cellie dynamic, but I just want to drop these rules on you for right now. We'll start a new video in a minute.